Hey, everybody. Welcome to the CS Leadership Roundtable. My name is Andrew Marks, and I'm going to stand up. My name is Andrew Marks, co-founder of the Success Coaching Training Program. We're back for our monthly live Leadership Roundtable, today discussing building a customer success team in a startup. This free learning event is brought to you by Success Coaching, the world leader in customer success professional development training. We actually hit a milestone late last month. Now we have more than 10,000 students globally on our platform. Yeah, very excited about that. And we've issued more than 6,000 certifications. Our training programs are available as self-paced online learning, virtual instructor-led boot camps, and hybrid multiple-week live coaching programs. We offer a number of standalone courses taught by industry experts, including data-driven decision-making, having difficult conversations, change management for customer success, and our new customer success leadership training track. Find out more about our training programs at successcoaching.co. Ashley will drop the link in the chat right now. Thanks, Ashley. Now, for those of you who haven't participated in one of these events before, this is a live and unscripted discussion where we dig into a single topic relevant to customer success leaders, regardless of the company that you work for, the scope of your role, or the sizes of the customer your teams deal with. We aim to pick topics that are going to be practical and useful to you. We're working on our schedule for next year, so I encourage you to suggest topics and guests for our program. Make sure to reach out and connect with me on LinkedIn if we aren't already, and drop me a note. And Ashley will drop the link in the chat right now if you have any ideas. Awesome. Thank you, Ashley. The schedule for our upcoming CS Leadership Roundtable events can also be found at successcoaching.co under the Events tab. As usual, we'll post a replay of this webinar along with a transcription early next week on our website. There's a lot of thought leadership out there, along with a lot of theories about how to deliver customer success. This series allows us to focus on practical real-world advice, best practices, techniques, and shared experiences from those practicing and leading customer success teams on a daily basis. And to do that, we invite 3 panelists to join me for a roundtable discussion. These are people who are great at their craft, and we ask them to share their experiences and their perspectives. We will be taking questions later during the webinar, so please use that Q&A button found at the bottom of your screen to ask or upvote a question that's already in there. Also, for those that are watching us on LinkedIn Live, post questions on LinkedIn, and we have somebody monitoring that who will feed those questions to us here in the webinar. Also, please keep all commentary to the chat window. So without further ado, I'd like our panelists to introduce themselves to y'all, talk a bit about who they are and what they do. And as usual, in alphabetical order, let's start with Boaz.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Boaz Arbel. I'm passionate about making people and companies better and successful. I'm an Israeli American and lived in the greater Boston area for the last 12 years. And I started my customer-facing career over 20 years ago. That was a long time ago. Worldwide, leading professional services and customer success teams all over. The most recent ones, I would say, is Profitect, later on acquired by Zebra Technologies. We did big data analytics for retail chains. Logs.io, where we did log analytics, security and observability platform. And the most exciting news for me is that I've just recently opened my own startup called Mayview, and we're gonna revolutionize. Thank you very much. And we're gonna revolutionize the recruiting and hiring process for companies using AI analytics over video interviews. Wow. Okay, and with that, I'll pass it on.
Awesome. Thanks, Boaz. Hey, great. Congratulations on that. Congratulations on the startup. Wish you the best on that.
Thank you. Okay. Later on, I'll tell you something about that.
Okay. Now on to Josh.
Hey, everyone. Josh Zamora. I am Director of Customer Success Management here at ServiceNow. I'm based in San Diego. Been here all my life. One of the few natives that are still around. Everyone else is a transplant, and we both love and hate them around here, but it's great. It's all good. So nice to meet everyone. Glad to be a part of this session. Looking forward to being connected with some of you that are joining us today. And I've been doing this and it's been going on 10 years. Sorry, Boaz, not as long as you have, but I'm still putting in my time here. So enjoy customer success, enjoy the community, and glad to be here.
Awesome. Thanks, Josh. And last but not least, incomparable Miranda.
Hey, everyone. Thank you so much for joining today. I'm Miranda Dekonsky. I am the Chief Customer Officer at a company called Swiftly. So Swiftly is a big data platform that serves public transit. And if you're abroad, we call it public transport. So we power everything from the behind the scenes analytics to the real-time passenger information. This is my 7th startup. And I've been part of 3 companies that have had successful exits. I've been a part of 2 companies that have had IPOs, one unicorn, which was Lending Club, and then also HelloSign, which was an acquisition by Dropbox. And I have been kind of like Boaz, I've been in this this type of role for over 20 years. I know it's deceiving because I only look like I'm about 21, but I actually have a child who is going to turn 21 in March. So yeah, I've been doing this for quite a long time, and startups is my passion. Even though I did start my career in a very large organization, I moved from Michigan to California about 11 years ago to take that leap and start building out tech companies and startups. So this is something that I'm very excited to talk about, and yeah, just happy to be here.
Awesome.
And yay for young looking parents, Miranda.
Yes. Well, she had her son when she was 4.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Miranda, you have had a very interesting trip to where you've gotten. We've talked about it before.
Yeah.
Well, as a matter of fact, we should probably do one of our moments of truth, talking about just about your journey to customer success. I think it's fascinating. But thanks, Miranda, and to all of you for making time for us today. Now let's get to the topic at hand. During our prep call, we talked about a number of different things related to this topic, and I'll forego throwing out some tongue-in-cheek questions or statements out there, because I think we all agree on the importance of building out a customer success role, especially within this subscription economy that we all live in. So let's begin with, when is the right time to focus on building out a customer success function in a startup?
Well, I can take that one if that's okay with you.
Yes, of course.
All right, thanks. I think you can be too early on that. And as a founder now of a new company, I can tell you that, and I promise I tell you something about that. We consider what to call my role in the company when I'm owning all customer facing, from marketing through sales to customer success. And we considered COO, CRO, and we ended up with Chief Customer Officer. And why is that? Because that's so important, to put the customer in the middle of everything you do, even if it's just the 4 co-founders that we are. That's so important to put the customer in the middle and think through everything in the customer's eyes. How will that look like? How will that be accepted? How will that impact anything we do? So not too early, I would say as early as possible.
Thinking customer first from the outset.
Absolutely.
I agree with, everything that Boaz just said. And I think one of the core mistakes that folks make is they think of customer success as a department and not a mindset. I think it's incredibly important that customer success, or the success of a customer, is ingrained throughout every part of the organization, and that we're taking into account the customer's needs as we're building and scaling these startups, or else you fail out of the gate. I will say, though, from a practical side, because there are probably folks out there that are building startups that are listening to us right now saying, okay, that's nice and lovely, but that doesn't help me with my budgeting, or that doesn't help me with when I'm supposed to hire. And I think there are some practical things too around when you should actually hire a customer success team. And, and this could be controversial, but I think when there is product market fit and when you're starting to bring in customers is when you should start hiring for customer success, and not before. But making sure, again, I want to reiterate that you have to have customer success as a mindset throughout the organization.
And Josh, I know that that's something it's very important to your organization. And you've been going through some evolution at ServiceNow, just on that particular topic, this notion that customer success isn't just a function, but it's also it's a culture.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because we've gone through any number, I think we're at number 4 of iterations of some form of customer success at ServiceNow. And granted, I'm probably the one on this panel that is probably working for the biggest company, but we act as kind of like a startup within this big organization in customer success. So because this is our 4th round of doing this here at the company, there is a focus on the culture, right? There's a focus on the philosophy of customer success that needs to exist before you even put a person into the role. And piggybacking on what Miranda said, if you don't have that focus from the top down, from the get-go, then it doesn't matter who you put into the role. It doesn't matter what the budget looks like. If you're not driving towards customer success, you're not driving towards your own company success either.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it's not about getting them in the door anymore. It's about keeping them, right? We're playing a long game. It's about, increasing customer lifetime value.
Well, and it's an investment, right? So I think a lot of times people look at this role, this department, this function as kind of a cost center, but we need to flip that script a little bit more, right? It's not just a cost center. It's an investment into the customers, and then it's an investment into your own future in the long term. If you don't make that investment into the future, then you're potentially going to miss out on some really good opportunities for how your customers can grow and, expansions and renewals and all the things that come along with that.
So, and I want to get into some, best practices for building a CS team and all that stuff. But a frequent topic of conversation, and I myself have thrown this out there on LinkedIn, is should CS own a number, right? And how does that play into getting the attention and the investment that you need to build out a customer success team?
Technically, everyone in the organization owns a number, right? Technically, everyone owns the renewals or, the sales number. But as a goal, should CS own a number? If you would have asked me, I don't know, 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago, I would say, no, absolutely not. Should not own a number. Right. Surprise, my thinking has evolved a bit.
Yeah.
And the numbers of what my team drives is showing the results of this evolution. So for example, my team is responsible for net retention, gross renewal, and NPS. I try to balance it out with having a sentiment component in there with like NPS, but gross renewal and net retention. So we do not close the upsells, but we are responsible for, identifying upsell opportunities and getting those over to an account manager to, negotiate. But we are responsible for the renewals, and we do own that number. And, our goal is to have above 95% gross and above, hopefully 125% net. We did end 2020 around 116. So we did phenomenal job of getting there. And this year we're tracking to end in a solid way as well. So I know it's controversial, but yes, we should have some type of number because it also helps the leadership show the return on the investment to the CFO or to the folks that hold the purse strings to justify further spend. Without that component, it's really hard to build an ROI case.
Well, and so I think this is really important because I've talked about it at a couple of other events, but if there's no proof of our value in customer success, if it's not measured, if it's not documented, if it's not standardized, then it doesn't exist, right? And that applies to our metrics of performance in a CS organization. If we don't have an ROI, and I worked at a company previously that I brought this up numerous times, and numerous times I was always told, well, everyone knows that we're doing a great job. Everyone knows that we have an impact on our customers and we're doing great on renewals. But the fact is there was no attribution model. There was no way to say, when I tie a CS resource to this account, we expect X, Y, and Z in terms of the metrics. And I don't view a number as just like, do you have a quota for renewal? Do you have a quota for, expansions, whatever? I view a number as, are you contributing to the overall company success? And can it be measured by and communicated to executives so that they can see the value of the department. Short story is that that company let go of their entire CS org because there was no proof. There was no way to actually articulate what our value was. And as a result, a lot of people lost their job because we weren't able to make a case for why we existed. And that's always a difficult place to be. So I would extrapolate that idea of the number to be more than just a quota, more than just a target that you're trying to hit. It's the number of your value to the organization. That's really what we're talking about here in my mind.
Absolutely. Absolutely, Josh. And I agree with you. And I would even say I was probably lucky to work with great sales team, both at Logs.io and Profitect before. They have really cooperated with us, with the customer success team, and mutually we were responsible for both expansions and renewals. While we were not carrying a quota per se, we were measured and compensated on these numbers hand in hand with our fellow account managers or salespeople. It depends the size of the company. And that made everyone responsible. Now we drove a spirit of extreme ownership. If anyone knows the famous book of extreme ownership, so everyone owes everything, but you are measured and compensated based on that. We even launched at a certain point a Top Gun award to show the best leader and co-pilot, pilot and co-pilot cooperation to show how customer success can actually help leading sales within existing customers. So that was cool.
That's awesome. I would actually, so something I wanted that triggered a thought in my mind was that you just said, right? That collaboration with sales is so critical, right? Because if we can't mimic what they've already established as part of the sales process, whether that's through sales enablement or sales operations or whatever it is, then we're missing out on a really good opportunity there from a post-sales experience. The other thing I was going to say to that, though, is that that collaboration doesn't exist in a vacuum, right? We have to be open to improving our processes to match what already exists in a very mature model, which sales typically already has. And we can't be combative all the time with that, with those parts of the organization that are quota driven.
So net owning, I like that you brought this up, Miranda. Owning a number does not mean that you need to negotiate a contract and break that trusted advisor relationship. Correct. Okay, so that's number one. And number two, you want to get budget for a CS team, own a number, right? That's when sales gets budget, right? So you see companies spending all this money on sales because sales is owning a number. Yeah. Own that number. And as you grow as an organization, there will become a point where the sustaining revenue that you have as an organization outweighs the new revenue, right? And that number becomes not just a critical part of your ability to get the budget you need to support that sustaining revenue. It becomes a critical part of the business surviving. Absolutely. As a concern. So.
Yeah, no, you're spot on. And most CS orgs are at that tipping point already in most organizations, unless you're very early stage. I know, there's always this goal to double, to keep growing every year. But I know in my organization, at least in my previous organizations as well, our current revenue always surpassed our new revenue goal. So if you think about it that way, we were guardians of more revenue on a daily basis than sales was bringing in. It didn't make us more important or less important. It just made us an important part of the overall equation. And that's a big call out.
I disagree with you. It makes you pretty important. I wouldn't underplay the importance that you bring to the table.
Exactly.
You're right.
I've had conversations with sales reps where like that confrontation exists of like, well, you can't touch this account because I have this quota that I need to hit, right? And I tell my team, you've got a remit that you're responsible for that's 3 or 4 times bigger than this new sale quota that they have. You have a seat at the table. You not only have a seat at the table, you have a voice that you can actually use and leverage as part of the engagement model with that customer. And if you're not using it, you're kind of missing out on a really good opportunity there.
I'm sorry, you don't have just a seat at the table. You have a freaking throne at the table. I don't want to, I don't want people to get big heads about this. But at the beginning of the COVID, at the beginning of the pandemic, I started hearing these stories from people who are losing their jobs in customer success, but they were keeping the salespeople. I'm like, what are you doing? That is completely ass backwards. What you should be doing is over-indexing on customer success, because you need to do everything you can to keep your customers. So nobody's going to spend anything for the foreseeable future, and the Q2 and Q3, of 20. Jesus, when was it? It was last year, wasn't it? It seems
2020.
like,
I know it seems like an eternity ago, right? Like,
yeah. I don't know about you, but like our business completely cratered in Q2, and then in Q3 it started to come back, and then
a lot of folks, yeah,
mind-blowing year in 2020. But the initial thought was, well, we need to streamline operations, and we'll get rid of customer success folks. Is why you saw all these people losing their jobs in customer success, and that was the last thing I thought people would do.
Yeah,
so that was kind of surprising.
I think there was a point that you made. There was a point made that prompted this thought that I just wanted to bring up. I do see still today that there is a lot of friction in organizations of sales versus CS, and I think it's unnecessary, but I also think it comes from a place of folks not really understanding what customer success does in an organization and what their remit is, to kind of speak to Josh's point. So I think a big way that we could all bridge this gap and create clearer understandings is not just once, not just twice, but again and again and again, share out at the company level why customer success as a team is there, what their purpose is. They're not there to just reactively support issues as they come up. They are managing a portfolio. They're making sure that portfolio is getting a return on their investment, that they're achieving their goals, that they're, strengthening that stickiness in that core of the relationship. And why is that important? And talk about that in everybody's language. Why is that important to you, sales? Why is that important to you, product? Why is that important to you, engineering? Why is that important to you, CFO or finance? Like, speak in their language. And I think if we got into a better habit, and I'm as guilty as the other, as the next CS leader, because I get busy, but if we get into this habit of doing this and evangelizing this on a regular basis, it would really break down some of those walls and that friction between sales and CS, because everybody knows what sales' remit is. It's, a story as old as time. We all know what sales does, and they're really good about knowing for each salesperson they have, they're going to print X amount of dollars, right? But with CS, there's so many different flavors and variations that sometimes it's just not clear to people why we're here or what we're doing or what our remit is.
Well, our job as leaders is actually a pretty big piece of it is evangelism. And if we're not taking that seriously, when we're building out so this goes back to the original question, right? When is it too early, or when is it early enough? Like, it's never too early, as long as we're doing the proper evangelism from the get-go. And that is actually need to be pervasive across all executives and across the entire organization. But we have to take it on ourselves to reiterate that fact over and over and over again. Because to your point, Miranda, like that fact gets lost in the shuffle when you're doing the day-to-day. And sometimes people just forget.
Yeah.
Okay.
Folks, I think the best way to do that is not just to remind people that why we are important, but to help them, each and every one, make their job better by putting the customer in front of them and helping them to think how whatever they're going to do is going to impact the customer's experience. And then they realize how much it's important to have a vibrant customer success vibe in the company, and to think of the customer first. One example I can give, and again, it goes to the relationship between customer success and sales, and that's huge thanks to Bridget Gleason, who was our sales leader back then at Logs.io. At a certain point, when the customer success team started kind of criticizing the sales that the salespeople did, a salesperson, an account executive, asked me, "Hey, what's going on with your team? Are watchdogs? I said, oh no, they are your guiding dog. They will help you go the right places. They will keep you safe from obstacles and from hurting yourself, because we are in it together. And that's when we kind of gain the trust internally of, okay, you know what? I'm flying at 200 miles an hour, but I have you to keep eyes on what's going on and help me.
Guide dogs, Sherpas, whatever the analogy is, right? It's about helping you get to where you need to go.
Yep.
Not acting as a, as a fail safe, right? As a backup plan. So, just a reminder: if you have questions, please don't put them in chat. Put them in the Q&A, and we will start. We will get to questions here in a few minutes. So, let's talk a little bit about best practices for building a CS team. So anybody have any best practices around building CS, what you look for, how you start to build that team up both from a people's perspective, but also kind of that operational perspective?
Well, they all have to have success coaching certification, of course.
Did not prompt him to say that.
Planted. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely not planted, but yes, they do. Actually, that reminds me.
This is the end of an infomercial that you've all just joined.
Well, actually, what you mentioned in making sure that everybody in the organization understands what customer success does, especially sales. We actually have a module in level 2 where we say that very thing. Is that as part of trying to align yourself and communicate effectively with sales, it's super important to share with them what it is you do, right? And it really goes for everybody in the organization. The better that other people understand what your role is, the better that you're going to be able to work with them, because it's something that you can't wait for somebody to come along and ask you. You have to be the one that makes the first move.
Yep.
Right.
So I have a serious answer to this, and I know that was a serious answer as well, but you can send me a check later, Andrew. I like looking at the CS role as kind of the tripart unicorn, right? And I know the unicorn thing is a theme, but they have to have sales acumen, number one, right? They need to be able to talk about the sales process, look at opportunities, find them, discover them. They have to at least understand how to sell, not necessarily be responsible for selling, to Miranda's point, right? They don't need to go and close the contract. But they also need to be balanced out with a consultative skill, being able to say no and do it in a way that makes the customer feel like, you know what? Yeah, you're right. It's the snooty maitre d' that's telling you that you shouldn't drink that wine. You should drink this wine with your dinner, right? And then the third part is that technical skill, being able to understand the product, being able to understand how it works, and why, when it fails, why this is a problem. And being able to translate those technical problems into business decisions or business solutions. I think that combination of those three skills, in my mind, is just a starting point for finding the right skill set for people.
So when you say consultative, you're talking about active listening, being able to use open-ended questions, that sort of thing. Yeah.
The soft skills, the ability to engage at a personal level, but also knowing that you're driving towards some sort of business objective behind that superficial level of just being friendly.
Yeah. So I'll take this answer a slight different way and talk about actually when to actually how to start building it out. But I'm going to share really quickly in the chat just a link to an article I wrote that is like an interview blueprint for customer success, and also linked in there is another article that I wrote around how to hire your first customer success manager, yada yada yada.
This isn't an infomercial at all.
This isn't. Well, I'm not making money. I'm not making money on this. This is just me offering up my brain to people for free. So I've built out multiple customer success teams from scratch now. And first and foremost, before you even join the company that you're going to go in and build the customer success team out for, make sure that you're being supported by the CEO. I'm assuming incredibly early stage startups that, if you are a leader and you're being tasked to come in and build this out of scratch, I always insist, and this is just my personal preference, that I report to the CEO. I'm okay reporting to the COO, but CEO, I will not report to sales. Even if they're just the most loveliest, wonderful salespeople, I refuse. I've turned down job offers where they wanted me to report to the salesperson. I'm like, we should be equals in the organization. I shouldn't have to report to the salesperson. Second, I always take it and I whiteboard out my end goal. And I break it out into chunks. So, what is my desired customer experience? What are the things I'm solving for? Am I being hired to build out a CS team because there's a churn problem? Okay, that's going to be a completely different path that I'm going to take. Or is it there is rapid growth and we need to make sure everybody's getting a return on their investment? Okay, that's a different path. Figure out why you're coming in to build out this team and what are the immediate burning needs that you need to solve for versus the long-term strategic needs. And then kind of back into it from there. I could talk about this forever, so I'm going to slow down a little bit and let others get in as well. But start with your end goal and then break it out into nice bite-sized chunks, preferably quarterly, and figure out what are the things that you need to solve for in each quarter. What is short-term? What is long-term? When do you need to specialize? So I bring in customer success managers that can do the full life cycle. That's the onboarding through renewal. Yeah. And then figure out, okay, when do you need to peel off onboarding and implementation and have your own team to do that? And then when do you need to peel off renewal? When do you need to peel off support? And build out your whole model as well that way.
So it's essentially building a success plan for your success team.
Exactly.
Yep.
Well, and
we teach that, by the way. Boaz had something to add.
Yeah, I want to piggyback on that because as much as we want to hire customer success early, sometimes in, unfortunately, too many companies, we just hire customer success and start up this organization too late when it's already overflowing. So I would say one of the first things to do is to cluster the customers, to break it down to tiers, not yes. to tiers.
Fragmentation.
Although you can get to tiers.
Bring the customers to tiers. Got it.
Everyone to tiers, but to tier it up to maximum 3 tiers, just define exactly who is where. Typically, the highest tier will generate 75% of your ARR, no matter what, but make sure you just keep 10-15% of your customers so you can really spoil them hard. Then have the main body and the long tail of that makes, 10-15% of your ARR, and define what you want to give each group there. And I think this single act pushes you to take database decisions, to get fully alignment across the organization. So who's getting what? And that would be my number one tip for you, except for some others. Be flexible and own anything that's going on, because all the others will just take their own. Take it all.
You have to be flexible, right? We are especially early on, just trying to figure this stuff out.
Yeah.
Right. This response that I sometimes hear, that's not my job. And I've been in a lot of startups. Is for me is a surefire way to find yourself in another job.
Yes, but.
Yeah.
Don't become the garbage can for the company.
I agree. You can't become the everything team.
No, because what happens is then you really can't build out the customer success team, and you become a support team or just the catch-all for the organization. And this happens a lot at early stage startups where everybody does own a little bit of everything. I talked about this a lot publicly. Like I was a VP cleaning out the refrigerator, right? Like that's just happens at early stage startups, building my own desk, putting chairs together, right?
You realize you had those skills, we would have hired you a long time ago.
Yeah, I do. I can change oil and brake pads too. It's the Michigan.
Oh, yeah, I know.
When are you coming down to San Diego? Because I can use a little bit.
My fridge needs a lot of work.
Yeah. But my point is if you do take on things that are outside of the scope, which you will, be incredibly deliberate about, hey, this is, we're going to take this on, but I'm going to need resources for this when we can afford resources, or make sure that you are just an advocate for keeping customer success as pure as you can, or else you're not going to be able to drive the outcomes, get the ROI, and prove that you need more headcount when you need more headcount, because you become viewed upon as like a reactive repository for the company.
Great. Josh, you have something to add?
Yeah, I'm like dancing.
I know you're like on the edge of your seat. I've got something to say.
This is my jam right here. So my boss, my VP, she's going to be really thrilled if she hears me say this, but this all speaks to operational rigor, standardization. Like, yes, we got to be flexible. Yes, we have to be able to accommodate different things, especially in a startup mentality, right? Everyone's going to wear many hats. However, and to Miranda's point, right, you can't become that trash can, and you have to draw those lines of, where is it that we can, where's our extremes where we're going to be able to say yes or no to certain things, right? I love RACI charts. I think they're some of the most powerful things, yet some of the most simple things that you can create as part of building a new organization. Where are the boundaries in which people can do their job, and what are the limits of what they're allowed to do or not allowed to do? Knowing that you're going to capture 80% of the situation and 20% is going to totally be a free-for-all, just give yourself that allowance, give yourself the grace to say, I'm going to build something out that is measured, defined, and applicable for almost all the situations that I'm going to see. And if you can create that, then you're ahead of the game by a significant margin, because now you have something you can point to and say, all right, look, this is what we do, and this is what we don't do, and this is how our success is going to be measured. And here's what you can use as an internal talking point for getting that budget, for building up that team, for making sure that you are engaging with the other departments appropriately. So operational rigor, standardization, and I'll add flexibility into it too.
I'll tell you, it's one of the things I love about your boss, who I've had the pleasure to spend some time with and record a webcast that will be coming out, by the way, hopefully in January, is that's her mindset as well. And that's a great place for you to be, working for somebody like that as well. But speaking of RACI, for those of you who've not gotten our access to our RACI diagram, we actually have a what we call the Customer Success Engagement Blueprint. I've dropped a link into chat for you to download if you would like to download your own copy of it. It is both a tool that you can use to figure out process. We break the customer success journey into the three primary phases of acquisition, onboarding, and then what we refer to as earn, which is everything that happens after onboarding. And then behind that is a playbook builder to help you actually build out these specific processes, playbooks. Feel free to download that. That link will prompt you to make a copy of our Google Sheet. Let's get to some of the questions. Emily posed a question here, which we kind of answered, Miranda, but I at least want to address Emily's question. Thanks for the question, Emily. Can you talk a little bit about firing up a CS org in a startup, and how and when you should separate the onboarding support CSM functions? How do you think about generalists versus specialists as you start to formalize the org? You did mention that everybody starts as a hero, basically the hero role, which I 100% agree with. You do not start out specializing. That's something that you end up, unless you've got a very technically involved product, and you have to have some people that are doing some really in-depth technical implementation work. But I 100% agree with you. You got to start typically in a hero role.
Yep. Yeah. So I guess the question is when do we think about the specialization? So I'm going to give an answer that may sound very simple, but has worked very well for me over the past few years. And it is to track the time as best as you can. It doesn't have to be perfect, of where your CSMs are spending. So take a look at how much time is your CSM using to have, conversations about projects they're working on with your customers, or the return on the investment the customer is getting from the product, or just customer conversations, and how much time is going into reactively solving problems, and how much time is going on to training new people coming on the platform and onboarding folks and dealing with any kind of technical issues. And once you see that the time spent on anything but managing that portfolio and making sure that customer is achieving their desired outcome is surpassed by all these other little things, once it does surpass, that's when you start thinking about peeling it off and specializing it. So when you see that they're spending all their time doing, tech support tickets, or helping reset passwords, which, believe me, happens a lot, or onboarding or running trainings and stuff like that, once you see they're doing that the majority of the time, then take a step back about 2 or 3 months and then peel it off. So you don't want that to happen.
Makes sense. Boaz, Josh, you got anything to add?
Go ahead, Boaz.
Or is Miranda just?
Good.
Miranda's stealing everyone's thunder.
I know she is. Well, she always does. That's how she.
Mic drop is very appropriate at that point.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, Emily. Thank you for the question. As a reminder, by the way, we are going to we don't end this until 15 past the hour. So those that need to drop, at the top of the hour, totally get it. But for those of you who can stick around, we are here to continue to have this discussion and answer questions. And if you do have a question, please don't raise your hand. Please add it to the Q&A, because we do not respond to the hand raises. Next question that's been uploaded comes from Guy. Looks like Boaz wants to jump in on this. When a software company has good retention, but not a great customer success group, sometimes it's too late to improve the CCS office. By that time, attrition starts growing. What are the KPIs you recommend besides ARR retention?
So yeah, I volunteered to take that because I hope it's not personal. Guy used to be my CEO at Profitect. So Guy, I hope you do not hint to that period of time. I guess not. No, we're good friends, and we had good time together, and we built something very nice, a very good organization. To the question, yeah, ARR is one of the KPIs, not perfectly reflecting what the customers think about you or your product or your service. Sometimes they keep on paying just because they just don't want to deal with anything else, but they're for sure not happy. I would recommend the following KPIs. First and foremost is engagement. Engagement splits into two. One is managerial or executive sponsorship engagement. The other one is actual usage. Usage is measure. How much they use your product, how often, for how long, and mainly what are they using? What features are they using? Are they using the value-adding features, or they're just using it as a depository for something stupid that they can easily replace with something else? That can give you a monitoring in a trend over time, can give you a very good indication. The second would be NPS and CSAT. I know it's very controversial. However, it does give you some visibility into what the users are thinking about you. If you do that consistently, you get a good picture over time, better, less, okay, but you get something out of the customer. Call customers for QBRs, quarterly business reviews. If they show up and you listen, you will learn a lot. If they don't show up, you already learned a lot how deep of it you are in. So yeah, I'm trying to keep my French with me. And then referrals. If you can get referrals, even just to the conversation of, hey, would you come to talk in a conference with me? Would you capture this great success story over a one-pager? If the answer is no, or let me think about that, boom, you got a problem. So Guy, I hope I help. Love to help you in the future too.
Can I piggyback on one thing that you said, Boaz? NPS, I know the controversy around NPS, right? Because it's not a comprehensive thing. It can be misconstrued. One thing that I like using NPS for, and we use it here at ServiceNow, is that NPS is an opportunity for conversation, right? So it's not an end-all be-all metric. It is an opening into a different conversation altogether. Sometimes, especially if it's a negative one, those are our best opportunities to actually create some sort of reasonable and meaningful change within the customer's experience. And if we don't take advantage of those opportunities, then we're missing out on a great chance to actually wow customers with something fantastic, right? But then that also leads to that last point that you made about referrals. If you get a great NPS response, then that also leads into the opportunity to be like, hey, you want to come and talk to us? You want to come and write a white paper for us? You want to speak to a potential target account? Like, it does create those opportunities. So NPS is more of a vehicle to me than an end-all destination in my mind.
I agree with you, Josh. And I will also say NPS, for me, it's more about the trend line than it is about the number. And, you know, going on almost 3 years ago when I started at Swiftly, we were in the 30s. We are now 70 on our NPS. And what's more important to me is watching what the trend line is. What's also more important to me is, in general, like, who's responding and who isn't. So do we have responses from the folks that are not just in the day-to-day, but also those that are making decisions about the renewal, the key sponsors, the executive sponsors, those folks? And if you're not getting those responses, that's a great time for your CSM to follow up with their key contacts, their executive sponsors, to say, hey, you know, we send the survey out and this is why it's important. Just want to touch base with you to see, you know, where would you score us and why didn't you respond to the survey? Is there something going on? Of course, in a more articulate way, but you get the point. Like, following up, it gives you that window to open up that conversation.
Following up is so important, but also the difference. What I think it can be, what I found was incredibly eye-opening, which I've been looking at since I started doing NPS over 10 years ago, was the difference between what the executive sponsors NPS score was and what the individual users NPS score was. Because, you know, in certain situations, we saw a huge gap, and that was a big red flag. It didn't matter how great the relationship was with the executive sponsor. At some point, the grumblings from the end users are going to boil up.
Definitely.
Right? And you're going to have a problem.
But
Or
just so
the other,
go ahead, Miranda.
Or the other flip side of the equation, maybe the end users love the product,
right,
but the executive sponsors have no clue about the value that they're achieving, and that never makes it to them. That's the reason why you do executive business reviews, to talk and celebrate those wins.
You are not doing a good enough job disseminating the value that you have demonstrated that you've created. Josh.
One operational thing that I've come across numerous times, right? If you don't have the right audience of that NPS survey pool of candidates, then you're also going to get some pretty misconstrued data. That's something that operationally, from a data cleanliness perspective, especially if you're starting early with NPS, right? You have a brand new organization, brand new team that you're working on. Make that a primary part of making sure that this KPI is actually meaningful. All the data in the world is meaningless if it doesn't have a good story behind it, and if it doesn't have appropriate level of cleanliness in terms of how that data is collected. So having the right contacts, making sure that all that stuff is tracked the appropriate way, will save a ton of trouble in the long
Awesome. Run. Awesome. Guy, thank you for the question. Boaz, if you could hit done on that one. Our next question comes from Jade. Jade asks, it takes time to show the ROI of CS, though. How do you properly manage the company's expectations when they do not understand that and want quick results?
I think you have to, there is no one size fits all. So it depends kind of answer, but I think you have to set the expectations. Think about the organization as your customer, right? So they're your customer and they're expecting a return on their investment. Just as you would your customer, you have to tell them or communicate with them, what are the steps you're going to take? What are going to be the early indicators? What are we going to measure to see if we're starting to see early signs of success? And when should we start seeing ROI? You can't just assume that your stakeholders within your organization are not going to want to see some kind of return on the investment they're giving you for your customer success team. So you have to treat them like you would a customer and give them milestones along the way. And if things aren't working, you also talk about that and say, well, I'm not seeing the results that I was expecting. These are the 5 things I'm doing to correct, and then readjust. And then you measure again and you head down the path again and measure, adjust. So
I don't know about you, Miranda and Boaz, but I've noticed that as I've moved up into managerial roles, and the higher and higher you go, the definition of customer in this whole term of customer success changes dramatically. Not only am I being a employee success manager for my team, but I'm also being a executive success manager for my leadership, and making sure that every one of those aspects of my world are achieving business outcomes, being able to track their successes, and being able to make sure that they have some predictability on all things. And this really does play into this idea of what is ROI? ROI is something that you have to be well defined and have to be able to measure it appropriately so that you can get the best value out of whatever that you're building.
exactly.
And whenever ROI is mentioned, I always keep in mind and let others think about the importance of perceived value. So there's a very hard number. There are areas where you can put a hard number around things, but there are areas that you cannot. And the perceived value of your contribution, your involvement of things, you being the right person in the right place and saving the day, okay, doesn't always translate into dollars or euros or whatever, wherever you are, but it's the perceived value. And as we lead this trend, I think it's important to do that internally too. And maybe it circles back to the beginning of the discussion here.
Awesome. Thank you. Thanks for all weighing in. Jade, thanks for the question. Next question, we've got a LinkedIn Live question from Rosanna. How can you actually start building the first customer success team and plan? What parameters should we consider first? And we touched on a few of these things, but anyone who want to jump in with anything else to add to that?
Yeah, I can take that one if that's okay.
Sure.
I think at the early stages, I would say finding the right go-to market is finding the fine line of go-to customer success. So what makes customer success great for you with the product at where you are, where the market is, where your customers are, because sometimes it's different. What's relevant today will not be relevant in a year because the product will evolve and mature. But for right now, for the next quarter or two, what does onboarding look like? And start to define, and it's okay just to throw a number in the air. Onboarding will take anything between 5 to 7 weeks. Why? That's what we believe at the moment. Let's start measuring that. And we'll happen to see that it takes actually 8 to 9 weeks. Okay, but you have some stats to build in, to analyze. Okay, and then you fine tune and you realize, why did it take 8 weeks? You feedback to product, you feedback to sales. Hey, do not promise for weeks anymore because it puts us on our heels. So that would be one of the things to find the right go-to customers at the beginning. And onboarding is just one example for that.
I want to add too for folks, make sure you understand who your customer is and what they need when you're thinking about this. So I've been a part of multiple companies that have very different business models. Some are B2B, like enterprise. That's kind of where I am now, where it's high dollar value customers and they require a more high touch. And then I've been a part of companies where we've had, hundreds of thousands of customers, and there's just no way that could be a high touch model. And when I was building that out, we had a lot of free users, a lot of users that paid $9.99 a month. And then we had customers who paid us tens of thousands of dollars a year, right? So understand where you are understand who your customers are. What kind of revenue are they driving? What kind of model is the right model for your customer base and your company? You got to balance out both the customer needs and the business needs. You can't put in a high touch model where viably it won't make sense for the business. So you have to figure that all out. So take a step back and start there. I also just want to call out, as somebody who's now been a part of 7 startups, most of the time, unless you have a heavy high touch onboarding model where there is some kind of intervention that is needed, customer support is usually started before customer success. And then the company starts realizing, oh, we have all of these customers that are kind of going through this journey on their own. And if we orchestrated this a little more, we probably could increase the lifetime value. Or there are a lot of modules or parts of our product that aren't being used or haven't been purchased. Oh, I wonder how we could get that in front of them. Or, you insert the oh moment. And that's generally when folks are like, oh, we should bring in customer success. I see it happen again and again. They start with customer support because they want to solve for the immediate, the now, the noise. And then they start realizing there's some strategicness that is missing from the overall relationship.
I think this speaks a lot to the whole idea of defining success for customers, right? Defining success, what customers view as success when they're using your product, using your services. If that's not well defined in some way, and a lot of times we assume from the vendor side, we assume that we know what customer success looks like. And in reality, we've never taken the time to go and ask the customer, or we've never taken the time to go and look at trends, and we've never taken the time to go look at what are the most common things that people are asking about. And as a result of that, we miss the boat on how do we actually define what a journey actually is supposed to look like. And this goes to something I spoke about earlier, right? Mimicking what sales does in defining the stages of what it takes to become from a prospect to an actual sold customer. We need to do the same process to define what's a sold customer to a successful customer so that they're going to renew. And if we don't take the time to document it, to measure it, to actually articulate it in a way that it makes sense, then again, we're going to miss the boat on what the customer is actually expecting to see. And we're going to start seeing that churn number go up.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you, Rosanna. And thank you, LinkedIn Live. Our next question comes from Brian. Brian asks, I know this is about building a CS team, but can some of you speak to some strategies around scaling a small CS team in a startup as the company starts to see rapid growth?
Yeah, this is my life.
I knew you were going to jump right into this.
Brian, I eat, breathe, and sleep this, and I've done it multiple times. I think Boaz may have mentioned it earlier. He called it tiering. I call it building out segments. So segmenting out your customer base. There comes a time when not everybody can be high touch, or not everybody can be low touch, or not everybody can be engaged through tools. You need to figure out where that moment is, and then make sure you're, doing some kind of segmentation and figuring out what experience each segmentation needs to receive to be able to make sure they're getting the value they need to out of your product to continue to grow and renew. When you hit that point, then you map out the skill sets you currently have within your team. The skill sets that you are missing are the skill sets that you are missing, things that you can train your current team to do and bring them along, or are they gaps that you need to fill? Are there functions that are missing that you need to be able to, get the customers to where you want them or need them to be on their journey? If there are these things that you can fill with your current team, or are these things that you need to hire for? It's very, to me, it's just very simple and repeatable. But you look at things that way, where you segment it out. What's the experience? Do I have it? No. Can I train for it? No. I need to hire for it. Or can I train for it? Yes. How do I need to do this? Right. So it's that method again and again.
And I will add, also building out a bench that's appropriate for what is it that you're trying to fill of that gap, right? Because if you're going through this experience, like Miranda just talked about, right, you define where the gaps are, you define who could potentially fill those gaps. You're going to have a profile of a person or the type of role that needs to be filled. There's nothing that says, budget and all those things, of course, but there's a really good case for building out a meaningful bench of people that could potentially fill in that role. And then be okay with hiring people that are maybe not as experienced, but can be trained appropriately, right? I think one of the best resources that I've ever hired was someone that had no history in customer success ever, but they came in, and because they were willing to be trained, because they were willing to actually learn our product, our services, our processes, they became a fantastic customer success resource. And I think that this speaks to the fact that, like, we've got to be less biased in the way that we're building out our benches and building out our team, and more focused on what are the goals that we're trying to achieve as we scale up, as we grow, as we achieve greatness within our companies.
Yeah, and you know what, Josh, you're so right, because the need for customer success talent is so big right now and growing by the day that we'll have to bring in people who do not have experience in customer success, but in other industries or areas, and it's up to us to teach them and coach them in, and they're wonderful people.
I mean, I don't know anybody who can do that for us or help us.
Big gap.
Once again, that was not staged.
Do you know anyone? And it's like the COVID shots. It's not just one seminar that is enough.
Right.
You need to do 2 and a booster 6 months later.
You do 2 certification levels and then a couple of webinars.
Yeah.
Awesome.
I often hire folks from the domain area, right? The domain expertise. So I have folks on my team that come from public transit that have 0 experience in customer success and have been very successful. So kudos to you, Josh and Boaz, that you think the same way, because I think it helps our industry.
Cool.
Awesome. Thank you, Brian, for that question. We still got a lot of questions. Okay, I like this one from Serena. Serena, how do you think about the number of people, CS headcount, needed to support your customer base? By revenue, by number of accounts, by segments?
I think we already started answering some of this.
We did.
At some level, we've answered pieces of this.
Yeah.
Absolutely, all of the above. Right?
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. I was going to say yes.
Yeah. Segments are so critical, because if you don't have the segments, you don't know how you're going to spend the time. The number of accounts, because you don't want to overwhelm one person with the same type of work on 37 accounts. Revenue, right? Bigger customers are going to require different needs than smaller customers. And
it's by the way, it's not just existing revenue, it's potential revenue as well.
Exactly.
Right? What I don't want to do is overburden somebody with an account that has huge upside, because then they're not going to be able to spend, time is a finite resource. They need to be able to spend time doing the strategic things that they need to do with those accounts to generate more value from them, and thus more revenue for us.
But this all boils down to one word that I would say that is really, really critical in this decision-making process. It's intentionality, right? If you do not intentionally look at what are the triggers of hiring more people, segmenting the way that they work, building out the processes and the playbooks that they're going to be following, if you're not intentional about that stuff, then you're gonna always be in this quagmire of, well, I don't know how to hire more. I don't know what I need at this point in time. So it's got to be something that you're thinking through and making intentional decisions about.
Great. All right.
But you know what? It's one of the more irritating answers you can get. And Serena, I'm sorry if it's all blurred. Like, the answer, oh, it depends.
It depends, right? Exactly.
But I need some guidance. I'm asking for help. So I know this. I don't like it, and I'm not emotionally attached to it, but there's this magic number of $2 million ARR as a reference. Now, it's so depend on so many things, or complexity of the product, the maturity of the market to get your product, and so much. But Serena, maybe you can take that as a guideline and see if you break down your team into $2 million increments worth of ARR, see where that gets you. You may need to increase your threshold to be $3 million through all, and then maybe that can be a good starting point.
But it depends. I mean, it depends. The net of it is it depends, because there's a bunch of other variables too.
It's an art. It's an art, not a science. But I as well, Boaz, I use the 1.5 to 2.5 million. I have efficiency lines in my forecasting. So I say at 1.5 million per CSM, based on my forecasted revenue for the next year and the growth for, month over month, this is how many CSMs I'm going to need at 1.5, at 1.75, at 2.0, at 2.5. And then I figure out, what does that mean in regards to efficiencies, and what does that mean for the experience on the customer portfolio? What does that mean for white space out there? Are we going to be able to, continue to give that strategic attention? But I use that as well, the 2 million as my barometer, just as a starting point to kind of give me a visual. And then I think about the art into it, because it's not.
I mean, the art is the most important part, right? It's
Exactly.
like, okay, how complicated is my onboarding process?
Yep.
How technically adept are my customers? How, what's going on? How is my product maturing? I mean, what exactly do we have a single product? Do we have a suite of products? I mean, there's all of these different questions, and it very much, to your point, Boaz, the "it depends" can be an annoying response. But I've been saying this. I once had somebody 4 or 5 years ago from one of the now defunct customer success products out there. One of their social media folks tried to corner me on, okay, what's the right number? And I said, I can't tell you. It depends. If I said the right number is X, I would be misleading your readers, because it's not that simple. She threw a number out there anyways, and I respectfully asked her to not cite my name anywhere in her article, because I think that you're misleading people.
That was you?
That wasn't me.
Yeah.
I had nothing to do with that. Sharina, thanks for that.
So now I'd like to throw out in the air a challenge here for anyone on the line. Maybe try to convert the art into science and get a formula that will take all these "it depends" into something, and we can run it against the industry and see what it is depends on, and how we translate that into a quota, an ARR, a headcount, a whatever.
I think it could be interesting. You create a score for the complexity of the product, the complexity of the onboarding, and blah, 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 and all that stuff, and it spits out, okay, here's the number we think you're at.
But also make sure when you're doing it, you're taking into account the different price points of all the millions of products out there. Because $2 million per CSM for CSMs that are managing accounts that only spend a couple $1,000s a year is a lot different than like a high, an enterprise type portfolio.
Agreed. We got a lot of questions still. We don't have a lot of time. I want to start running through these really quickly so we can, and we've got a bunch of people from LinkedIn. And once again, we appreciate you checking in with us on LinkedIn Live. So I want to get to some of those as well. Real quick, I don't know how easy this is to answer, but Stephen asks, what is a reasonable target for spend on CS as a percentage of ARR? I know, right? I don't know how you answer that, but Miranda, you've been a COO, right? You've been in that COO seat. I would love to get your take on this.
This is a no-win answer.
And if someone has that magic answer somewhere, then we'll pay you money to actually help us solve that problem across the board, I think.
Is it another "it depends"?
I just don't think that I'm just going to say this. I don't think it's a healthy way to look at spend.
I think it's fair.
That's me. I never have said, okay, we have $10 million in revenue, 10% of that should go to CS, because it just, for me, that's never been an impactful way to do my budgeting. There may be businesses out there that can do that, but I've never found success in looking at the spend of CS as a percentage of the overall ARR.
Well, and then let's look at it from both sides, right? On the one side, if you underestimate that number, but they perform really, really well, there's still no proof that it could have been any number of things, right? You have the perfect product, you have great resources in the role. Like, there's so many things that could affect why that number would be wrong in some cases. So I agree with you, Miranda. I think that's a really hard thing to pinpoint and be able to say, yes, this is the magic number. It's not going to ever deviate from that.
Boaz, anything to add before we move on? Awesome. Thank you. Stephen, thanks for the question. From LinkedIn, Laura asks, what do you think about offering customer success training? We know what I think. How is it accepted by current and future customer success managers? I'm going to recuse myself from this answer personally.
I'll jump in on this one right away because we are actively going through that with our team. So ServiceNow, 16,000 employees, fourth iteration of customer success that we're kind of going into right now. Part of the thing that I'm expecting all of my team to go through is to go and get a certification. the goal is to try to create baselines of performance across all the team members, right? Because our industry is still relatively new, and because there's so much variability amongst one company to the next, what CS actually looks like, any effort towards standardization is a good effort. And I think that offering some sort of standardized success training, and I'm a fan of Andrew and what you guys are doing, of course, but I think even internal things that help at least standardize what language are we speaking? Why are we talking about it this way? What are the expectations of success for customers? Like, all of that helps in defining what a good resource is going to actually be able to achieve within the role. So I think I'm a big fan of the process, regardless of where you end up going.
Yes,
I will-
and sorry, go ahead, Miranda.
I will just say the one thing that, every leader who is thinking about putting in any kind of customer success training, make sure you have a very strong why, and that folks that have been doing customer success on your team for 6 months, a year, 2 years, or whatever length of time, they're like, well, wait, I've been doing my job. I'm doing my job well. Why now? Why do I need this now? So make sure you build a very strong why as to why you're putting this in, or why you're thinking about doing this, and how it's going to benefit not just the customer, not just the company, but them and their careers.
They're with them.
Their evolution, right?
They're with them, right? They're what's in it for me.
What's in it for me? Exactly.
Absolutely, and I'd add to that official training is important. Yet, if you just ask your team to join webinars like this one and others, and there's so many, and they're all free now at your time, you can just get a recording and watch it, kind of as a homework and then training. It opens your mind, even if you didn't get the answer, but you heard concept, you heard different opinions, and it grows you up to be a way more holistic into this industry.
I'll add 2 more quick little things. So one of the things that I ask all people that come and talk to me, especially internally, like, hey, we want to join your team. We want to join customer success. That's great. Here's a list of 4 books that you should probably go and at least take a look at, right? And I don't offer to buy them for anybody. I just say, hey, here's what I've used in the past, right? Those are the Success Economy books. That's the Customer Success Professionals Handbook. Like, those books are great starting points for the conversation. That's one thing. The second thing I'll say is that organizationally, as you mature your customer success organization, the power of customer success enablement really takes a very, very, very central point in my mind, because that helps us with that continual standardization, that continual, like, everyone is at the same level and understanding what they're going to be doing, so that, you're not having to reiterate the same points over and over again with people that have been there for 2-3 years at a time.
Laura, thank you for that. We've got time for one more question. All right, let's. I'm gonna ask for a perspective or a best practice from each of you on this final question from Oliver, also from LinkedIn. Any suggestions on building a CS team where you have a mix of a few high touch value customers, numerous low touch value customers, e.g. more seasoned CSMs go high, novice CSMs go low? Let's start with Boaz.
Yeah, I love that one, mainly because I'm so much of a people's person, and that, other than just catering to your customers, build a great career path within the organization. So that way you can hire or bring in the seasoned people to take care of the high touch enterprise customers, but you can hire those that are fresh out of college, full of energy, willing to learn, okay, and show them a 4-year, I know for now, 4 years working at the same company looks like a fantasy, but you can build a long-term career path within your organization to bring them from one tier to another, deal with different customers, deal with different things, and I love that. And I'm all for it, yes.
Awesome. Josh, you got anything to add?
I'll go last. I want to hear from Miranda.
All right, Miranda, what do you got to say?
Wow, Josh, I thought we were going in alphabetical order here. I don't have a lot to add to that. I think Boaz covered it pretty well. I think it's always important, especially as you're growing and scaling your org, that you're thinking about career growth and career, paths within the CS org, or else you're going to have a constant pipeline of folks that are entering and exiting and entering and exiting. So one of the things I will say is if you do have low touch, high touch, and a high touch equates to high strategy, because not all low touch is low strategy, then it's a great way to have, career paths within, to start your customer success associates with, the folks that are less strategic so they can cut their teeth and get their wheels under them. It's always a great strategy to do that. And if you have that luxury and you have the budget and the resources, I definitely suggest doing it.
Yeah,
All right, Josh, now it's
my turn. And
it's your turn, and then we're going to wrap this.
So I think that Boaz and Miranda both had it absolutely right. There's the people component, right? We want people to be successful. And as I said earlier, managers are we are people managers, but also people success managers, I guess is the way I put it. So the goal is to make sure that we're aligning people best where they're skilled at, but also best where they have opportunities to grow. And if we're doing our jobs well, then our teams will actually be successful in their customer managements and their careers, all that sort of thing. And I think we can't lose sight of that process. So I don't have anything much else to add in terms of best practices, but I would say that focus will carry you through as a leader extremely well moving forward.
Awesome. Oliver, thank you. And Laura, to your question, by the way, we went ahead and dropped a number of those in the chat. I also added my latest favorite, which is Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss. But we are actually overtime now. That's great. And unfortunately we didn't get to answer a bunch of questions. This was a great session. And we had a lot of great questions, but we're at the end. I think it went well, but it's not what I think. It's what all of you think. So please let us know by posting your feedback on LinkedIn and tagging us. I want to thank my absolutely amazing panel of guests for spending time with us today. Thank you once again, Boaz. Congratulations on the new opportunity, and thanks for the prep call earlier this week. I very much appreciate the time in your schedule to provide these insights, these best practices that you shared with us. One final note: great CS leaders know they don't have all the answers, but they know where to get them. That's why we created this CS Leadership Roundtable, to harness the knowledge and the experience of the community to help improve everyone. So we hope you got something out of this discussion, and we'll see you at our next event on December 15th, which will pretty much be the last event of this year. We'll be talking about how to measure the efficacy of your customer success efforts and the efficiency of your customer success team with CS metrics. Check out successcoaching.co to find out more and sign up. Until we see you again, have a great rest of your day, week, and month. Stay safe and stay healthy, everyone. Hey, you guys, stick around for a minute until Ashley gives us the go-ahead.
All right. Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone. Hey, nice to meet you.
Thanks, everybody, for joining us.
Bye-bye.